The Pittsburgh Steelers were a team coming this season that I said, I wish I could roll the clip. I wish I could roll the clip. You know what? I probably will. They're easily a playoff team. Now, when we first started this podcast, I didn't know what I was doing. So all the people in the comments were like, is this how this moron talks?
But there's one big thing with this team, two actually, because the second is pretty notable that everyone seems to forget, and I don't know how. That show me this is easily a playoff team next year. They may not win 12 games, and the quarterback position may be a concern or a question to some people because it's an unknown.
So
No, because you were talking about them making the playoffs with Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, you were like Mitchell.
Let's not forget that. That was the reason why we got on you, because me and Brandon were laughing.
All right, let's talk about it. So
Mitchell Trubisky, you thought was leading your team to the playoffs.
I was wrong about Mitch. I didn't think Mitch could get worse than a Chicago tenure, but boy, was that boy cold. He had a couple of good moments. He beat Tom Brady, of course, at Heinz Field, coming in, relieving Kenny Pickett. That was his best moment as a Steeler, and it may be his only because he's making $7.5 million. And to me, I would rather have Mason Rudolph as my backup. That is not the most important conversation with the Steelers. It is impressive to me. The Steelers won 9 games in 2021. Shout out to Mike Tomlin. In spite of Najee Harris for the first half of the season having no get off, playing with a middle steel rod in his foot to deal with a foot injury. And then TJ Watt, who had a monster week 1, misses over half the season, and when he comes back was not the defensive player of the year we saw a year ago. Those are your two most important players on each side of the ball, and they had a better record than the Browns still. That's one of our down years. So for Pittsburgh, did they make the playoffs? No. But man, if those damn Dolphins could have beat if those damn Jets could have beat Skylar Thompson, the Steelers would have been in the playoffs. We would have got knocked out in the first round. So this offseason, Steelers do have a couple of questions, and I want to hit those in the head. But before we get to that, what were your guys' takeaways, your spin on the Steelers 2021 season?
Impressed.
I mean, like, another feather in Mike Tomlin's cap. I've never doubted Mike Tomlin. I doubted the team that was surrounding him and that he had on the field, but I didn't doubt Mike Tomlin. So yeah, impressive. He was able to do it again. Yeah, I would like I gave Kenny some praise this season. He's making small small steps to get better every time, but we are gonna have to be objective. He didn't play particularly well. The numbers don't they don't look at you.
Numbers don't bear that out, unfortunately.
No. You're like, those numbers are not good. But we've seen quarterbacks have struggles early, and then they're able to flip the script. So it's gonna it might take a little time, like I said with Kenny Pickett, or it might be a quick jump like a couple other quarterbacks we've seen over the years. So we don't know. We're gonna see. But I do like Kenny Pickett, but we're gonna have to see going forward what Kenny Pickett really is. Because now going into a second season, he's going to be the starting quarterback from week 1. All right. You're not going to have questions about, chemistry, playing together and all the continuity and all that stuff. You got that. All right. You play with Deontay Johnson. Chase Claypool's out of there. You got Najee. You got Freiermuth, your boy.
Matt Canada.
Well, I mean,
yep, he's still there, unfortunately.
He actually did a good job later in the season.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it then. You gonna eat crow about Matt Canada?
oh no, believe me, you. Him and Joe Barry should be long gone. Him and Joe Barry from Green Bay.
I think your Steelers are in a good spot. I think they were let's see if I'm reading this correctly, 5-1 in their last 6 games of the season.
7-2 since the trade deadline.
So I mean, Kenny Pickett, while he didn't light the world on fire, he did make some throws that, I forgot what game it was, but he made a crazy throw on the run into the end zone.
Which game winner? Was that the one versus the Ravens or the one versus the Raiders to George Pickens?
I think it was the one against the Raiders. I think it was the one against the Raiders where he was almost going down to the ground, made the throw.
He had a lot of game winners.
Yeah, he did. It was a sick throw. But, I mean, I think you guys are in a good spot. Like I said, Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in football. And as long as he's there, you guys are always going to field a competitive team. So the real question is Kenny Pickett going to take that next step? Because you have a guy in George Pickens that is capable of being very, very special. I'm talking about a true go-getter of the football. So if he's developing, if Kenny Pickett is developing, if Najee is healthy, I mean Deontay Johnson, I don't see him punching Kenny Pickett in the face. So I don't know
I
if
don't
you
know if
got.
that report was true.
I
I
don't know
think
if it
that
was true
report was a
either, but it
lie.
was wild. But
That
it was absolutely wild. So if they're all meshed, and I truly believe that the Steelers are probably the best team when it comes to drafting wide receivers. They just know how to develop them. They know how to pick them. No pun intended. Um, so I really think that you guys are going to be in a good spot. Like you said, 7-2 from the trade deadline. If you guys start next season off hot, I think you guys are going to be giving Cincinnati and Baltimore a run for their money.
Mm. So DJ denied that report. That was in the Jet game where Mitch had a terrible first half.
Mhm.
He actually threw a touchdown on Deontay, but Johnson had 0 touchdowns this season. He had 2 plays where he didn't get his foot in bounds. So I agree with you guys. Kenny Pickett is turning 25 years old this June.
I'm turning 25 in April. Damn.
We just talked about Lamar Jackson before. Lamar is just 1 year older. He's been in the NFL for 5 years. So Kenny Pickett is the biggest question with the Steelers organization. If he takes a step forward in year two, you have a good feeling because we saw a lot of positives. Early in the year, he took a lot of shots, and for a Steelers offense that was deplorable, I think he was going to take some opportunities. And he kind of read the room a little bit with Mitch. He was passive. He didn't take those opportunities. And I felt like they kind of opened up the studio space to Kenny. By the end of the year, he showed a lot of positives. Number one, confidence. He's not Kirk Cousins. He hasn't folded under pressure. And we saw as the year went on, he had 0 turnovers in the second half of the year, at least 0 interceptions. And his accuracy got better and better. His biggest issue was for a guy that doesn't have an elite skill, right? Doesn't have the elite arm strength, doesn't have the elite athleticism. Joe Burrow has elite pocket presence. Tom Brady all time, right? Patrick Mahomes too, and he has all the other things. Kenny Pickett's pocket feel needs to develop where he can stay comfortable and composed in the pocket. Sometimes he'll get dancy feet and dip out when he had more and more time. And he lost some meat on the bone. If he can build on that, I think his 184 passing yards per game, which was a little bit misconstrued because he left 2 games early with a concussion and a 30 came in the halftime. So around like 200 yards, give or take, per game, 210. I'm pretty confident that, man, this is going to be a good quarterback. Will he be top 10? That might be a stretch for a guy that came into the league so late. But the good news for the Steelers is we see quick turnarounds every year in the NFL. And the Jaguars were a recent example of that. You have 4 years of Kenny if he's really good on a rookie contract. With a defense next year, if TJ Watt stays healthy, which believe me is a massive if, that's going to be a top 5 unit. If he's not healthy, we're seeing Alex Highsmith develop into a #1 outside linebacker. And that was my biggest takeaway this year. Highsmith was snubbed from the Pro Bowl. The guy finished with, what is this? 14.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. That's the best outside linebacker duo the Steelers have had since they went to the Super Bowl in 2010. Secondary is a big question with this team. William Jackson was a player they had midseason, didn't play. And they also have a big-time free agent, Cam Sutton. Great corner. Really good. And he might get poached from a team like the Vikings, who had in Brian Flores to be their DC. Former Steelers linebackers coach. Flores did a great job this year. One player he unfortunately could not save was Miles Jack. He came in from Jacksonville, and we expected him in Pittsburgh to be a true #1 outside linebacker. And by the end of the season, he and Devin Bush were both not playing. Guys like Robert Spillane, an undrafted free agent, and Mark Robinson, we're talking about Lamar before, I liked out of Ole Miss, took bigger and bigger roles. The Steelers have some holes defensively, cornerback, linebacker, but they have 3 picks in the top 50. They have 2 in the top 32. This is going to be a big offseason, not only for Kenny Pickett's development, but a first-time general manager in Omar Khan, who was more of a cap guy. He brought in an assistant GM named Andy Weidel from Philadelphia. Now, the Eagles, they built a Super Bowl winning team with Weidel being Howie Roseman's right-hand man, but what they won't tell you is that the Eagles in those years didn't draft very well at a place like wide receiver. Jalen Rieger, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So, Jared, they can develop these guys, but if Andy Weidel coming in, I hope he hasn't touched any of these receivers on the board. Whatever he does, do the opposite. But I do think Weidel can kind of provide a new spark here to this front office. I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm not going to discriminate because of his time in Philadelphia, where he may not be making the draft decisions.
So, question before we
So,
move on.
yep.
What does Kenny Pickett need to be for the Steelers to actually contend? Because I think we could all be in agreement. He's not
Mm,
going to be Trevor Lawrence.
no.
He's not he's not Mahomes. He's not Justin Herbert. So, what is it that he can be to lead Pittsburgh to the Super Bowl?
He needs to develop and maximize everything he can control. So he can run when he needs to, and he can make plays out of structure. We need him to throw for 4,000 yards next season, and we need him to stay healthy. Like I said before, it left 2 games early. The Ravens and the Buccaneers with concussions. We can't have any more concussions. That's a big concern. So with Tua, obviously, you're praying for this man's health. I love Kenny. I'm a big fan of him. But that's going to be a big thing. Can he stay healthy? Can he avoid those concussion issues? He actually changed his helmet. And the second thing would be increasing that level of productivity and also dial back the turnovers. Now, not all of his, 7 interceptions were turnover worthy. But, I mean, there were many plays where he got away with a dropped interception or two. I think that, to answer your question, Justin, is the biggest thing. He had, 6 touchdown passes? Now, he had a couple rushing. He had some quarterback sneaks. I just want to make sure this is correct. With Matt Canada as our offensive coordinator, I made a mistake. So it was 7 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Earlier in the year, it was 7 interceptions.
2 games of 3. So
2 games of 3. Yep, right. The Jets and the Dolphins. Now, those kind of snowballed a little bit. Oh, man. I'm just worried about Matt Canada kind of putting a seal on this offense. There's no creativity. It's pretty predictable, and those 2 things are pretty imperative for a play caller. So Kenny has to overcome that as well here, which is a big gamble. Big gamble.
I don't know. I think Kenny's ceiling is borderline top 10 quarterback, kind of like a Dak Prescott type.
okay, that's
Two
pretty high.
guys.
I didn't expect you to go that high.
No, I don't. He's not that now. I think that is
No,
his.
but that
Yeah.
ceiling, yeah, no, I didn't expect you to say that. That's
Well, I mean, he's a prototype. Like when you look at it, think of a quarterback. Kenny Pickett is what a prototypical quarterback would look like.
true.
He took very good. If you look at his college years, his 3 first years weren't anything to look at, but then he took that massive jump in his 4th year. So that showed that with consistency,
Some
sustainability,
maturation,
he
yeah.
can get better.